Bows, TKOs, yeah. Bows, TKOs, we got bows, TKOs, yeah. Bows, TKOs, we got bows, TKOs, yeah. Bows, TKOs.
Bows and TKOs. We are live, episode 101, coming from the valley on this beautiful Wednesday afternoon. And boy, do we have a show today. I'm rocking the sugar gear from Miami as we got a massive UFC 316 card. We have some fun fights that have been announced, and then we will recap the shallow UFC Fight Night 107 card. I'm your host, Shane Gillette, for this weekly MMA podcast, streaming anywhere you get your podcasts and videos on YouTube. So let's jump right in. We have a short notice kind of matchup, literally a couple weeks out. Malcolm Wellmaker, the up-and-coming prospect in the bantamweight division. That division does not lack prospects. Wanted to fight in Atlanta after a beautiful display. So he is getting the return of Chris Moutinho. If you remember the guy that took like 700 shots from the Sugar Show, he will get another chance against another very tough bantamweight. And that'll be a fun fight to see. You know, Sean couldn't finish Chris, what Malcolm could do to make sure he could win on the scorecards if he can't get the finish. We got Kennedy and Shekwaku taking on Walter Walker July 12th. That's a fun light heavyweight matchup, or I guess maybe even heavyweight. I know Kennedy's moved up. Let's see. What does Walter fight at? He is a heavyweight. So Kennedy sticking at the heavyweight division. Should be fun. We have a really absolute amazing scrap. Absolute banger. We get Dan Ige Patricio Pitbull at UFC 318. I cannot wait for that one at International Fight Week. Or is it International Fight Week? 317 is international. So the BMF title in New Orleans, we now get Dan Ige Patricio Pitbull. We have Rodolfo Vieira taking on Tresean Gore August 2nd. Azamat Bakoev taking on Torres Finney August 2nd as well. Both good matchups. On August 9th, we have Alex Perez and Steve Erceg. Astro Boy getting back in the octagon, not fighting the top three in the division. We have Mayra Bueno Silva and Jocelyn Edwards August 9th. And then the second fight booked in Chicago at UFC 319. We get Karine Silva and JJ Aldrich. And then August 23rd, we have Loney Kavanaugh taking on Charles Jourdain. I am absolutely pumped to see what Loney can do against a very good energy really good fighter in Charles Jourdain. And he's moved down to bantamweight. Now let's recap UFC. Let me look. Is it Charles Jourdain or Charles Johnson? For some reason, I feel like Charles Johnson just got a fight booked. Yeah. Charles Jourdain is supposedly fighting Ricky Simone. I want to make sure I got the right things here. Charles Johnson is fighting Loney Kavanaugh. Either way, still an awesome fight. Big step up for Loney after his great performance in his last bout. Well, let's talk about UFC Fight Night 107. I went 4-3 on my picks. That puts us overall 606 wins, 308 losses, 8 no contests and draws. On the year, 122 wins, 67 losses, 1 no contest or draw. And to recap this card, I mean, really just a disaster of events for the UFC. 2 fighters removed and rescheduled, 1 fight called off, and then the main event during the walkout called off, which Macy Barber had talked to a few people a little bit about the situation. Not sure what happened. She blacked out. She's been battling medical issues for a long time. She said she wanted to fight. The doctors called it off. There's been lots of things said about Macy Barber. She didn't make weight, but she's been unhealthy. You can't, slander a fighter for health, especially with weight cutting and all the issues that they go through. I'm going to give her a pass. I understand Erin Blanchfield's remarks about she's classless, her life's a mess, like she didn't make weight, she's not professional. I don't want to fight her again, she's not dependable, but she is a great fighter when healthy. Prayers to Basie Barber, and hopefully she gets healthy soon, but definitely put a damper on the evening, as that was really the only fight to be excited about. I'm recapping this card a 2 out of 10. I had a poker night on Saturday. Glad I didn't wait to see this stuff live. So a good fight we did not break down. We had Ramiz Brahima with a round 1 submission via guillotine choke over Billy Ray Goff. Billy Ray Goff, a big favorite. Ramiz got to him quick, got the neck. Beautiful display. And then in the prelims, we had Jordan Levitt with a round 1 submission via anaconda choke over Kurt Hullabo. Performance of the night, 50 G's. Welcome back to Jordan Levitt, the newly tainted father. And I did not expect Jordan to be able to take Kurt down immediately in less than 30 seconds, let alone just beautifully flow into a submission that literally puts his lights out. He slept him. And I was surprised and shocked by, the showing from Jordan. He's been out of the octagon for some time, but clearly he hasn't been taking days off in the gym. He looked strong, he looked quick, he looked smooth. We know he's good at grappling, especially with a quick win like that over a veteran that's been through all the promotions, been in and out of the UFC, and is a solid grappler of himself. So a fight I did get wrong, but what a performance by Jordan Levitt. I'm excited to see what he does next. He has cemented himself like he belongs with the best of the division. Statistically, Kurt only landed 7 strikes, total strikes. Jordan landed 2 total, 1 significant. He went 3 for 4 in takedown attempts, had the submission attempt, and 1 minute and 17 seconds of control time. So Jordan starts a new winning streak. He's 2-1 since 2023. Kurt extends his losing streak to 2. He's 2-3 since 2023. So what's next? Well, I think Jordan and Chris Duncan would be a great matchup. And for Kurt, how about Jamie Malarkey? I think I've recently poked guys against Jamie and Chris. Plenty of opponents for them to book up against. And then a razor-thin fight here. Alan Nascimento with a unanimous decision over Rafael Filho. Now, I did not expect this to be an absolute grappling showdown. And of course, I did not expect Filho to be the one initializing the takedowns. Rafael dominated the first round, getting really hard-fought takedowns early, and he was able to keep top control. I think with the battles and the energy that was exerted in round 1, it really wore out both fighters. And in round 2, Rafael got another takedown, but Allen was able to reverse him because he tried to go onto his back, got too high. Allen was able to shake him off and control Rafael for the rest of the round to steal it, both pretty much with top control time. 1-1, not a lot of damage provided. And then in a winner-takes-all third round, Nascimento got the takedown of his own, and Rafael was just exhausted. And he kind of accepted the position. But honestly, in this fight, the high-level grappling, the BJJ, it was beautiful to watch. But I wanted Nascimento to try to stand and strike because when he did, he was having success. But there was crazy 50-50 positions, battle for takedowns. It really was a chess match on the mat. For those of you that really like mixed martial arts and the grappling side of things, it was fun to see. Statistically, Rafael landed 40 total strikes, 14 of them significant. He was 4 of 7 in takedowns with a submission attempt and 6 minutes and 20 seconds of control time. Allen landed 30 total strikes, 12 of them significant. He was only 1 for 6 in takedown attempts, a submission attempt, 2 reversals, and 7 minutes and 3 seconds of control time. So both men, not a lot of strikes landed, over a round of control time, but Allen winning that third round really was the difference, and neither man really provided a lot of damage up top. So Allen with a long layoff as well extends his winning streak to 3. That dates back to 2022. And Rafael ends his 2-fight winning streak. He starts a new losing streak. He's now 2-2 since 2023. So what's next for these flyweights? Well, I think Allen and Matt Schnell would be a banger. And for Rafael, how about Clayton Carpenter? And then in the main card, we only had 4 fights because of the fallout. But kicking it off, we had Zachary Reese with the unanimous decision over Dusko Todorovic. another fight I got wrong. I took Dusko as an underdog, but I will admit, I don't like to slander fighters or fights at all, but this fight was not technically sound at all. For both men having so much on the line, being in their prime windows to add on top of that, they didn't look like they belonged. Dusko was just selling out as a grappler, and his lack of strikes cost him in this fight, even though I did think he won rounds 1 and 2 and won the fight. The judges gave Zach round 2, which was a razor close round, but when you don't land any serious shots and spend a lot of round on your back, I'm not too sure how you win. Sure, Dusko did get the takedown with top control, but he didn't convince the judges because not only did he not land strikes or look to land strikes on top or when the fight was standing, his body language was terrible. And although Zach was being taken down multiple times, he seemed like the fresher fighter, had the better cardio, and did just enough, so credit to him. I was impressed with Zach's cardio, but I was very disappointed with Dusko. It just doesn't feel like he belongs. He's had his attempts, he's in the middle of his prime, and that was an absolute piss-poor performance. Statistically, Zach landed 73 total strikes, 50 significant. He had 2 takedowns in 3 attempts, 1 minute and 19 seconds of control time. Dusko landed 73 total strikes, 35 of them significant. He went 4 for 13 in takedown attempts, so didn't have a ton of success. A submission attempt, a reversal, and 5 minutes and 30 seconds of control time. So again, when he was looking to grapple, he'd come in hands down, kind of sloppy, looking for the takedown. He would try to close like 50 feet. It wasn't pretty, but he was still able to find a way. So what's next? To be honest, I'm not sure if we'll see Dusko in the UFC again, but if we do, I think he'll take some time. And for Zach, how about Marco Tulio? You get a win, now you get a tough up-and-comer. Moving on, we got Ketlen Vieira with a unanimous decision over Macy Chiasson. And another fight I got wrong, and one that played out a lot different than I expected. Because this fight was more of a surprise because Ketlen reminded everyone why she's atop of the division and has been a true contender. Although they didn't score a takedown for Ketlen, she was able to time and time again find her way on top, and Macy couldn't get up. She spent more than 2 rounds on her back. And while the fight was standing, Ketlen controlled the octagon and was chasing Macy. Macy was so worried about Ketlen striking in the middle, she was on her bike and kind of wore herself out with the movement because she usually doesn't fight that way. Vieira never really got her own offense going either, but with the kind of clashing and the scrambles and ways on top, she was able to keep those positions. By round 3, you could see how frustrated Macy was. Ketlen was kind of just coasting to victory, and Macy was just launching big shots, yelling at her. Finally got her cut with about 40 seconds left. Just a tough night in the octagon for Macy, especially with how good she's looked in her last few fights at the bantamweight division. And the stats speak for it. Ketlen landed 106 total strikes, although only 28 of them significant. She was 0 for 1 in takedown attempts, but had 10 minutes and 6 seconds of control time, so more than 2 rounds. And Macy only landed 52 total strikes, 22 of them significant, and she was 0 for 4 in takedown attempts. I really did expect Macy to just be relentless Merab Dvalishvili style on the takedown attempts, and that wasn't the case. She was more so just playing defense and running around the octagon, avoiding the strikes. So, Ketlen starts a new winning streak. She's 2-2 since 2023. Macy ends her 2-fight winning streak, starts a new losing streak, and she's 2-1 since moving to bantamweight. And both women stay at their spot in the rankings. So what's next? I think Macy and Eileen Perez would be the fight to make. And for Ketlen, how about Norma Dumont? She's been on the shelf. She's been begging for fights. Now she could fight a serial contender, and the winner gets the next title shot. But how about Dustin Jacoby with a round 1 knockout over Bruno Lopez? And this fight went about how I expected. I really did think Dustin would put on a dominant display. But to be able to sit down Bruno with just a straight jab was a surprise. In the Octagon interview, he was even saying he was a little bit surprised. He's like, I live off that jab. But once he had Bruno stumbling, I mean, he absolutely pounced on Bruno. It was like a shark with blood in the water. and he wanted to get that first round finish. He did so, but I think he absolutely got robbed a bonus, especially on an evening like this. How do you not get a performance of the night bonus? Either way, as I expected, I don't believe Bruno belongs at the top of the heavyweight division. Statistically, it only took Dustin 17 total and significant strikes with the knockdown. Bruno landed 5 total and 3 significant strikes. So now Dustin extends his winning streak to 2. He's 3-3 since 2023. He's been active. And Bruno starts a new losing streak. He's 2-1 in the UFC. So what's next? Well, I'd like to see Dustin square up with other division mainstay Ion Cutelaba. And for Bruno, how about Ervan Erslan? Then in what ended up being the main event, it was the typical Mateusz Gamrot display as he got a unanimous decision over Ludovic Klein. And we all knew Gamrot was going to bring the pressure in grappling, but it was just too much for Klein. Klein did a really good job in round 1, but Gamrot has too much technique and moves to get you down, and he was just relentless at doing so. He would even take some shots to close the distance and get the job done. As the fight wore on, Gamrot even started to land some nice shots with his hands. He was just too talented for Klein right now, but he battled and did what he could. So, although he lost all 3 rounds, Klein definitely showed some heart. Hard to get an opponent like Gamrot on short notice. Statistically, Gamrot landed 142 total strikes, 65 of them significant. He was 6 for 11 in takedown attempts, and he had 8 minutes and 45 seconds of control time, so better than 50%, plenty of control time and strikes. Klein landed 85 total strikes, only 24 significant. So now Mateusz starts a new winning streak. He moves to 4-1 since 2023. Ludovic is 4-1-1 since 2023 himself. So what's next? Well, I think Mateusz deserves a top-ranked opponent. With a lot of the division booked up, he had called for it. I would love to see him dance with Benoit Saint-Denis. And for Klein, he could look to try and rebound against Grant Dawson. But enough of the Apex. No more Apex events until August 2nd. This weekend, I am absolutely hyped. I can't wait till Saturday. We get UFC 316 in Newark, New Jersey. The early prelims at 3 p.m. Pacific. The prelims on ESPN at 5 p.m. Pacific. To preview this card, the main card is absolutely stacked, especially with the addition of the Pyfer Gastelum fight and Patchy Mix's debut. The prelims are loaded with great matchups. The early prelims are probably worth a skip, but overall, I am previewing this card a 7 out of 10, and this is the biggest fight for the future of the bantamweight division in the main event. So let's kick it off. In the early prelims, we have one fight to break down. We get Wang the Joker Cong, 33 years old with a 7-1 record, taking on Ariane, the Queen of Violence de Silva, 31 years old with a 17-10 record. Now, although Wang is somewhat newer to the UFC, she is kind of on a revenge tour after tiring out after a high output early in the first round against Gabriela Fernandez. And Ariane may be on a skid, but she is in her prime and isn't an easy out by any means. Both women like to strike, so it should be a fun stylistic matchup early in the evening. Breaking this down, Wang has a kickboxing and Sanda style. She trains at a Team Alpha Male. She's the 2013 Sanda World Champion. She's on a 1-fight winning streak and is 3-1 in the UFC. Ariane has a Muay Thai style. She has a black belt in Muay Thai and a purple belt in BJJ. She's tied with Talia Santos for most knockdowns in UFC women's flyweight division history with 3. She had the 2020 Submission of the Year against Luana Carolina. She's a KSW alum and former champ with 2 successful title defenses. She's on a 2-fight losing streak and is 3-2 since 2023. 6 of her 17 wins are via knockout, 4 via submission, so 10 of her 17 wins via finish, and 4 of her 10 losses are also via knockout. Now, Wang has had a very successful kickboxing career, but can also take her opponents down. So if Silva is having success, she can mix it up as she struggles fighting off her back. I just think Wang is too technical and powerful, but I expect Silva making this a dogfight. I do expect this to be a fun one. I am taking Wang Cong. I am putting her on that parlay. We marking that ish down, and we getting that bread. Moving on into the prelims. Another kind of mixed bag of matchmaking on short notice here. We finally get Khaos, the Ox Fighter Williams. 31 years old with a 15-4 record, taking on Andreas Gustafsson, 34 years old with an 11-2 record. Trying to remember who Khaos originally had. I think he went through 2 different opponents before landing with Andreas, who had a fight fall out as well. Let's see. So Khaos was originally booked against Urosh Medic, which would have been absolutely phenomenal. Then it was supposed to be Albert Tadavosian in his UFC debut. Now gets Contender Series alum Andreas. But this is Andreas' official UFC debut after his Contender Series victory. He was supposed to fight Jeremiah Wells this past weekend, and now is taking it up a notch on a pay-per-view card against stiffer competition. Khaos is coming off a loss, but he's in the middle of his prime and is no easy out either. Breaking this down, Khaos trains at a Murcielago MMA. He has a blue belt in BJJ. He's a King of the Cage alum. He's on a 1-fight losing streak and is 2-1 since 2023. And 8 of his 15 wins are via knockout. Now, Andreas has a Greco-Roman wrestling style. He's a Cage Warriors, Brave, KSW, and Contender Series alum. And he's coming in at the edge of his prime, and he's been in some great promotions. He's on a 3-fight winning streak and is 4-1 since 2023. And 8 of his 11 wins are via knockout. So we have 2 finishers. You know, Andreas and Khaos has had to deal with some canceled fights, but Andreas is coming off 3 straight finishes, and he's going to be willing to scrap with Khaos. So this should be a banger. I expect an early finish here to get the New Jersey crowd rocking and rolling. But I'm taking Khaos Williams. I am putting him on that parlay. We marking that ish down, and we getting that bread. Moving on in the prelims, we got Serghei Polar Bear Spivac. 30 years old with a 17-5 record and the number 7 next to his name. Taking on Waldo Salsa Boy Cortes Acosta. 33 years old with a 13-1 record and the number 11 next to his name. Now, Waldo surprised me a little bit. A boxer, used to be a pitcher, has big velocity, which means he's got some torque behind his hands. But he's really coming into his own as an MMA fighter. He's added some base level grappling to get wins over the likes of Rebellis to Spain. He's got some quality wins to his name now. But Serghei is a legit heavyweight. He's going to take Waldo down and look to smother him. Waldo has that boxing background, as I mentioned, and is going to look to put hands on Serghei. Breaking this down, Serghei has an orthodox stance. 2 of his last 4 fights have been performance of the night. He's showing up, he's showing out. He has the highest takedown accuracy percentage in the UFC heavyweight division at 65.1%. He's an Eagles FC alum. He's on a 1-fight losing streak, but is 2-2 since 2023. 8 of his 17 wins are via submission, 7 via knockout. So 15 of his 17 wins come via finish. He gets the job done. And 4 of his 5 losses are via knockout. But he also has an 8-inch reach advantage. Now, Waldo has a boxing style with a blue belt in BJJ. He's a rough Bellator, LFA alum and former champion and Contender Series alum. He's on a 4-fight winning streak and is 4-1 since 2023, and 6 of his 13 wins are via knockout. Now, Serghei has been finished in 3 straight losses and twice in the last 2 years. With that being said, I'm sure there is a possibility of Waldo getting a finish, but I expect Serghei to be able to clinch Waldo, close the distance, and get him to the mat over and over, but he better be careful closing the distance. I do think Serghei really puts it to Waldo. and exhaust him in a smothering showdown. For that reason, I'm taking Serghei Spivac. We are putting him on that parlay. We marking that ish down, and we getting that bread. Moving on. We got Azamat, the professional Murzakanov, 36 years old with an undefeated 14-0 record and the number 12 next to his name. Taking on Brendson, the Gorilla Ribeiro, 28 years old with a 17-7 record. Now, I really wish we were getting the original fight, which was Azamat versus Johnny Walker, but I'll take what we can get. You know, Brendson is still a young, powerful force at 28 years old, and he's going to be willing to test Murzakanov, but I think Azamat is going to be too quick and too powerful for Ribeiro. Azamat is a deceiving-looking guy, but he can throw some fucking hands. Breaking this down, Azamat has a southpaw stance. 2 of his last 4 fights have been performance of the night. He shows up, he shows out. He's a Ring of Combat, Fight Nights Global, Brave, and Contender Series alum. You know, he's come into the UFC later in his career. He's already 36, but those are some serious resume promotions. And of course, he is undefeated on a 14-fight winning streak, only 2-0 since 2023. 10 of his 14 wins are via knockout. Now, Brendson is an M1 and Contender Series alum. He's on a 2-fight winning streak, 3-2 since 2023. 9 of his 17 wins are via knockout, 7 via submission, so 16-17 via finish. Again, a lot of people want to knock this card, but these are some fun collision course fights. I think the fight does stay standing, and Murzakanov is too good of a striker for Brendson. I even expect probably a first-round finish in this fight. So I'm taking Azamat Murzakanov. We're putting him on that parlay. We marking that ish down, and we getting that bread. Moving on to the prelim headliner. We have Joshua the Fearless Van, 23 years old with a 14-2 record and the number 14 next to his name, taking on Bruno Bulldog Silva, 35 years old with a 14-6-2 record and the number 12 next to his name. Now, this fight was actually originally booked for March, but Josh ended up fighting and defeating Ray Suaria. And I'm excited for this fight, as Van has been on an impressive run since losing to Charles Johnson in July of last year. But Bruno hasn't been the most active flyweight, but he did enough to earn a fight against one of the top contenders in the flyweight division, Manel Kape, who's some of the best competition the division has to offer. Now, as much as I like Joshua Van, I am a little shocked about the odds. Right now, he's a plus 600 or better favorite, even up to 700 on some sports books. Bruno's a dog, and this is going to be a fun one. Breaking it down, Joshua is a Fury FC alum. He's on a 3-fight winning streak, 4-1 since 2023. 6 of his 13 wins are via knockout. Now, Bruno trains out of American Top Team. He has a black belt in BJJ. 4 of his last 5 fights have been performance of the night. This guy's a dog. He is the bulldog. He shows up, he shows out. He's on a 1-fight losing streak and is 2-1 since 2023. And 6 of his 14 wins are via knockout, which for these guys and their knockout stats, very impressive in the flyweight division. Again, should make for a fantastic fight. Now, as much as I've said Bruno's a dog, he fights just like his nickname. He really is a bulldog. He's going to bring the fight to Joshua, but Van is one hell of a boxer. He is still only 23 years old. I think people forget that. But he is going to stick in the middle and clang and bang. Bruno has the ability to mix in grappling, but Van has showcased amazing takedown defense, and I think we're going to see this fight mostly on the feet. There may be a chance Bruno gets some takedowns, but this is going to be the toughest and hardest hitting opponent Van has faced yet. The thing is Van is a lot more technical, more of a straight striker. Bruno definitely, ducks, has wide overhands and some hooks. I do think Van is going to have the speed advantage here, and I think that's going to pay big dividends. I could see this fight going either way. I don't think the odds should be that high. I am taking Joshua Van, but I'm avoiding this on any parlays. I think this is like a minus 110 fight in my head. But let's kick off the pay-per-view in the main card. We got Vicente, the Silent Assassin Luque, 33 years old with a 23-10-1 record and the number 14 next to his name, taking on Kelvin, Trailblazer Holland, 32 years old with a 27-13-1 record. Now, fresh off a victory against Gunnar Nelson in March, Kelvin Holland, as he always does, is looking to stay active. And he is sticking with the welterweight division, which I think is absolutely the move. But the challenge is that Kelvin is getting another grappler in his prime as well. Luque, solid striker, great grappler, great jiu-jitsu at only 33 years old. And I do think Vicente has much better BJJ than wrestling, but it's going to be a legit challenge for Kelvin, who has had susceptible defense, and a big reason I've kind of written him off until he proves me right. Breaking this down, Vicente trains out of Kill Cliff FC. He has a black belt in BJJ and Luta Livre. He's tied with Matt Brown for second most post-fight bonuses in UFC welterweight history at 9. He shows up, he shows out. He's tied with Thiago Alves and Li Jingliang for second most knockouts in the welterweight division history at 8. He has the most Bravo Darce choke submission wins in UFC history at 4. He has the second most finishes in UFC welterweight division history, 14 of them things, behind Matt Brown. He's tied with Damian Maia and Chris Lytle for second most submissions in the welterweight division history at 6. He has the fastest Anaconda choke submission in UFC history, 52 seconds against Themba Gorimbo. He's a Jungle Fight and Ultimate Fighter Brazil alum. He's on a one-fight winning streak and is 2-1 since 2023. 11 of his 23 wins are via knockout, 9 via submission, so 20 of his 23 wins come via finish. Now, Kelvin has an orthodox stance. He has a second-degree black belt in Kung Fu and a black belt in BJJ. 2 of his last 4 fights have been performance of the night. You know, he always shows up and shows out. He's tied with Paul Craig for the second most performance of the night bonuses in UFC history at 8. He's tied with Roger Herta and Neil Magny for most wins in a calendar year in UFC history with 5. He has the most wins in a calendar year in UFC middleweight history at 5. He has the most bouts in a 12-month period in UFC history at 7. This is his 3rd fight of the year. He said he wants 5 or 6. He was the 2020 Male Fighter of the Year. He's a Legacy FC, King of the Cage, LFA, Bellator, and Contender Series alum. He's on a one-fight winning streak and is 4-4 since 2023. 14 of his 27 wins are via knockout, 8 via submission, so 22 of his 27 wins via finish. These guys get the finishes, and he's long. Well, he's got 4 of his 13 losses are via submission, and he has a 5.5-inch reach advantage. And as fun of a fighter that Kelvin is, he doesn't really have a quality win in years, and a win here would not only put him in the top of the rankings, but would set him up for a run in the welterweight division. Vicente is a skilled fighter. He really is good everywhere. He's had some tough breaks, but I think he finds a way to get Kelvin down and take him down multiple times. I think that's the big difference in this fight. Because usually when people get Kelvin down, they get to keep him there. And I think they will be evenly matched as strikers. But Kelvin definitely has the length advantage, so Vicente is going to have to, measure up for that. But Vicente is also really good once he's on top with ground and pound and being offensive with submissions. I am really curious on who tries to come forward. Whoever's trying to control the distance in the middle of the octagon, or as Mighty Mouse likes to say, the void. I think that's really going to be the big difference. And that will be the fighter who controls the pace of this fight. But I'm going with the underdog. Vicente, the odds have gotten bigger, is a plus 216 to 250 underdog. The dog's coming to eat. I am not putting this on any parlays, though. Then we have the new UFC debut, Patchy No Love Mix. 31 years old with a 20-1 record, taking on Mario Bautista, 31 years old with a 15-2 record and the number 10 next to his name. Patchy recently said this week he will submit him, his whole team, his coaches, whoever, and that he called Mario a journeyman. Well, Mario's just at the fucking edge of his prime. He's definitely not a journeyman. Just because Patchy was fighting lightweight chumps in other divisions doesn't mean that, Mario's no slouch. But everyone, including myself, are really pumped to see Patchy mix in the UFC, especially in his prime. He didn't have to wait till 35, 36 to come to the promotion. But the challenge is he's getting thrown right into the deep end of a very stiff bantamweight division and a very good fighter in his prime as well. And this is Mario's biggest stage of his career, but I think he's ready for the moment. Breaking this down, Patchy has a southpaw stance. He trains out of Extreme Couture. He has a black belt in BJJ. He's the former Bellator bantamweight champion with one successful title defense. He has the most stoppage wins in Bellator bantamweight division history with 6, as well as the most submission wins in Bellator bantamweight history at 5. He's a King of the Cage alum, former champion with 2 successful title defenses, and Bellator alum. And 13 of his 20 wins are via submission. Now, Mario trains out of the MMA lab right here in Phoenix. He has a black belt in BJJ. He's an LFA alum. He's on a 7-fight winning streak. 6 of his 16 wins are via submission. Now, I'm just as big of a fan of Mario, probably more than the majority. And he's very, very talented and is an absolute workhorse. The problem for him is he's facing a fighter that has been through so much in Bellator and other promotions at only 31 years old. Patchy has defeated the likes of Sergio Pettis, probably the best competition, Rafian Stotts, great grappler, Magomedov, great grappler, and Kyoji Horiguchi, again, all pretty grappling-heavy fighters. Patchy has world-class cardio and grappling like Mario, but I do think he's a better striker, and that's going to be the difference in this fight. This is going to be absolutely a dogfight, plenty of takedowns, 50-50 positions, reversals, damage dealt, and I think the winner is going to be the next serious contender in an already stacked bantamweight division, but I'm taking Patchy mix. We are putting him on that parlay. We marking that ish down, and we getting that bread. Now, those main card fights are awesome, but holy shit, these next 3 fights, they get the juices flowing. We finally get Joe Body Bags Pyfer, 28 years old, 13-3 record, taking on Kelvin Gastelum, 33 years old with a 20-9 record. Now, this fight was also originally booked for March, but Joe got sick in Mexico, so it got pushed to this weekend. And man, am I excited for it. Kelvin versus Izzy just got inducted into the UFC Hall of Fame, and I'm not sure if this fight can live up to that, but I do expect 15 minutes of straight violence. Now, Kelvin has had his up and down past few years, but I think his legit move to middleweight will do him favors. He looked to be in fantastic shape against Daniel Rodriguez, and Joe now is nearing his prime. He still, has learned some lessons along the way. A perfect example is his fight against Jack Hermanson. But I think he's just so powerful. He will overpower Kelvin for 15 minutes. And I might think differently if this is a 5-round fight, but it's only a 3. Breaking this down, Joe is a Ring of Combat alum and former champion. He's also a Cage Fury and Contender Series 2-time alum. He's on a 1-fight winning streak and is 3-1 in the UFC. 3 of his last 5 fights have been performance of the night. He shows up, he shows out. 9 of his 13 wins are via knockout, and he has a 3.5-inch reach advantage. Now, Kelvin is a southpaw fighter. He trains out of King's MMA. He has a black belt in BJJ. He has a JUCO wrestling background out of North Idaho College. He had the 2019 Fight of the Year against Israel Adesanya. That's now in the UFC Hall of Fame, as I mentioned earlier. He's the Ultimate Fighter 17 champion. He's on a one-fight winning streak and is 2-1 since 2023. 6 of his 19 wins are via knockout, 5 via submission, so 11 of his 19 wins via finish, and 3 of his 9 losses are via submission. Now, Joe, again, is such a brute force with power and wrestling ability. I think he's going to have Gastelum just trying to stay alive and defend early in the first round. How he responds post-first round will be the most interesting part of the fight. I'm sure he does well and will have his moments, but I think Kelvin, he's a workhorse. He may look to try to put the offense on Joe and look to grapple him and wear him out. But Joe, I think, does enough with his volume and striking arsenal to win the first 2 rounds. But Kelvin's a great counter striker. He likes to push forward. I just don't see him doing that in this fight. If Kelvin can take Joe down, things will be a lot more interesting. And the longer the fight goes, I think the pendulum does swing to Gastelum's favor. I do think Joe learned a lot in that Hermanson fight. He's going to be well prepared and won't get exhausted like he did in that fight. For that reason, I'm taking Joe Pyfer. We are putting him on that parlay. We marking that ish down, and we getting that bread. Then in the co-main event with the bantamweight title on the line, we have Kayla Harrison, 34 years old with an 18-1 record, taking on Julianna, the Venezuelan vixen, Pena, 35 years old with a 13-5 record and the number 2 next to her name. Actually, that's Kayla Harrison as the number 2. She's the champ. Now, Julianna has looked great the past few years. She hasn't been super active, but really no one in women's MMA has. And she isn't getting any younger at 35 years old. She edged out a win against Raquel Pennington for the title and found a way to victory against Amanda Nunes back in 2021. I was there live. It was quite the sight to see. But the difference here is that I think Amanda wasn't well prepared and overlooked Pena back in 2021 in the first matchup, and she got tired out. She handled business in the rematch. Kayla lost her last 5-round fight back in 2022 against Larissa Pacheco, and things can't be easy for her cutting weight. She's looked like very, very skinny, very, very sucked down in her past few weight cuts. This will be the 3rd time she does it in a year at 34 years old. That's got to pay dividends as well. So I'm interested to see because Pena is a solid grappler of her own. Breaking this down, Kayla has a judo background with a 6-dan black belt. She trains out of American Top Team. She won gold in the 2012 and 2016 Olympics in judo. She also won gold in the 2010 Worlds and the 15 and 16 World Masters. She's a PFL alum and former 2-time lightweight champion. So to remind you, she fought at 145 in PFL. Many weren't sure if she could make 135 in the UFC. But 7 of her 18 wins are via submission, 6 via knockout, so 13 of her 18 fights via finish, which is great for women's MMA. Now, Julianna has an orthodox stance. She trains out of Valley Flow Striking. She has a purple belt in BJJ. She's a 2-time bantamweight champion. She's the Ultimate Fighter alum and champion as well. She had the 2021 upset and submission of the year against Amanda Nunes, which also got her the 2021 Female Fighter of the Year. She's on a 1-fight winning streak and is 1-1 since 2022, and 5 of her 12 wins are via submission. She also has a 3-inch reach advantage. Now, Julianna's a stud. I could see her exhausting out Kayla over the course of 5 rounds if she can get takedowns, and I don't think she's going to be able to take Kayla down numerous times. Kayla is so big for the division. She just blasted through the likes of Holly Holm. Ketlin Vieira actually was able to compete with her, but honestly, I feel like they're evenly matched as strikers, but I think Kayla's going to be too much early in the fight, and I don't think Julianna makes it to the later championship rounds. If she does, game on. But I'm taking Kayla Harrison and new, and we're putting her on that parlay. We marking that ish down, and we getting that bread. But for the moment everyone's waiting for, the bantamweight rematch. Sean Sugar O'Malley, 30 years old with an 18-2-1 record and the number 1 next to his name, taking on Merab the Machine Dvalishvili, 34 years old with a 19-4 record. I want to see when Merab's birthday is too. There's been the article floating around of how many, he's a fresh 34, his birthday was in January. How many title champions from, I think, bantamweight to like middleweight, post 35, it hasn't gone very well. You know, Sean, I think a lot of people forget, is just now hitting his prime at 30 years old. And I'll be damned, I went to UFC Noche at the Sphere, amazing event. I paid $850 for a nosebleed Sphere seat. You're way up there to watch him get wrestle fucked for 25 minutes and lose his title. But I put $100 back on him, try to get some of that back. I just have a feeling he's going to get the job done. But when we rewind the clock and look at the first matchup, the biggest difference was Merab showed so much patience and not rushing in where Sean could find the mark and land big shots. It took until the 5th round where he landed that nice body kick that really seemed to affect Merab. But really it's controlling the space. If Merab could be patient, again, you know, I'm sure he'll have his chances. But when you beat a guy, you got to have some sort of confidence, and he may be getting overzealous. Sean's really going to be the one that's going to have to change the game plan. Of course, Sean had a hip surgery. One of the things I noticed that was missing in the last fight was a lot of his feints, right? He usually feints like that hip motion, but if you have a torn hip, maybe that's not very comfortable. And although he had some nice push kicks up the front, he wasn't as active with the teep kicks. And I do think he's going to have to follow up with bigger combinations to keep Merab off of him. In the last fight, he would maybe do a 2-punch jab and then a 2 down the middle. But let's follow that up now with a kick or a body kick, and then, you know, stick and move, look to do it again. And another thing I think will be the big thing that I want to tune into is when Merab got a lot of takedowns, he would come in with that big loopy overhand and use that as almost a shield to go in, grab a leg, and get a takedown. I would like to see Sean, when he comes in with that, move in the pocket, try to get some combinations in him and push him back. I think that could be a huge difference in this fight. But we all knew it was possible. But I figured Sean would be able to keep the machine at distance in the first fight. Land a big shot like he did against Aljo. But again, it took until the 5th and final round. Again, I didn't realize he had the torn labrum in the last fight. But I think if Sean is truly healthy, he will be able to do a better job with those jabs, feints, teeps, push kicks, and work on his movement to keep Merab off of him. But we have to credit Merab in the first fight with his movement and his patience as well. Breaking this down, Sean trains out of the Red Hawk Academy and MMA Lab. He has a brown belt in BJJ. He's the former bantamweight champion with 1 successful title defense. He has the most significant strikes landed in the UFC bantamweight title fight, which was 230 against Marlon Vera. That was right here where I got this in Miami. 9 of his last 12 fights have been performance of the night or fight of the night. That's why he's got the star power. He shows up, he shows out. He has the highest striking differential in UFC history, which was 160 against Chris Moutinho. He was the 2024 SB for Best MMA Fighter. He's on a 1-fight losing streak and is 2-1 since 2023. 12 of his 18 wins are via knockout, and he has a 4-inch reach advantage. Now, Merab has a combat Sambo style. He trains out of Syndicate MMA. He has a black belt in Judo. He got silver in the 2019 Combat Sambo World Championships. He's had 1 successful title defense since the original O'Malley fight. He's the first Georgia-born champion in UFC history. He has the most unanimous decision wins in UFC bantamweight division history at 10. He has the most decision wins in UFC bantamweight division history at 10. He's tied with Rafael Dos Anjos, Bilal Muhammad, and Brad Tavares for most unanimous decision wins in UFC history at 11. He has the longest winning streak in UFC bantamweight division history at 12. He has the most takedowns landed in UFC history at 92. He has the most takedowns landed in a UFC bantamweight division history at 79. He has the most takedowns attempted in a bout in UFC history. He had 49 against Petr Yan. He had the most total strikes landed in UFC bantamweight division history at 2,092. He has the most control time in UFC bantamweight division history at 1 hour, 16 minutes, and 27 seconds. He holds wins over 4 former UFC champions, Jose Aldo, Petr Yan, Henry Cejudo, and Sean O'Malley. That's why he's the machine, and I honestly think is the bantamweight GOAT. He had the 2021 comeback of the year against Marlon Moraes. He's a Ring of Combat alum and former champion with 1 successful title defense and a Cage Fury alum. He's on a 12-fight winning streak and is 12-2 in the UFC overall. He started in the UFC with 2 straight losses and now has rung up 12 straight. Now, Tim Welch, Sean's coach, mentioned that they were surprised that Merab went for single high crotch takedowns in the first fight and didn't go for doubles. But there was no evidence in that fight that Sean could defend his takedown attempts. He did get up, but he was controlled for a few rounds. I just have a feeling he's going to do enough to keep the distance longer throughout the fight and find a way to get combinations off and touch him up when he comes to close the distance. Plus, like I said, when he has that loopy overhand right, he comes in for that takedown, look for uppercuts, get a couple shots off, stick and move, fire away right again. You can't just wait for Merab to close the distance. Plus, again, he didn't use a lot of feints in the first fight like he usually does. But Merab maybe will stick to the Merab game plan and just relentlessly come forward even more so than he did in the first fight. Also, I think Sean will have better luck with his ability to get back up if his hip really made that much of a difference. But he seems to have added some weight, some mass to him, is coming in better shape now that he's been able to train grappling. And evidence of the fights the past few weeks, you only have to land a few big shots in a round to steal rounds. There's been a lot of grapplers like the Dusko fight where he takes the guy down, has plenty of control time, but didn't land a lot of damage. Merab, the best shots he landed was the knees to the legs when he had Sean pinned up against the cage, which those do hurt, but I don't think score a lot of damage on the scorecards. So he's going to have to do better to try to get Sean on his back and land ground and pound. But I could see Sean landing enough big shots in a few rounds to steal those rounds and be more active on the scorecards this time. Sean is doing everything right. You know, he's really focused into the game right now. It isn't just because of the Merab fight, but he left social media. He's not smoking weed anymore. He's taking this game seriously. I'm not saying that he's just going to be able to control Merab in this fight, but Sean does have a big power and size advantage, even a speed advantage. I think that will pay dividends. I'm going to say, and new, I'm taking the underdog. The dog's coming to eat. Ho, ho! I put the money on Sean, but I am not putting this on a parlay. I can't wait to see this fight and break it down with you guys next week. Speaking of next week, we get another location-based fight night. This one's in Atlanta, headlined by the return of Kamaru Usman taking on Joaquin Buckley. And the former champion Rose Namajunas will be on the card. Plenty more in a stacked fight night card. That's episode 101. I'm your host, Shane Gillette. See you next week.